Richard Petty, probably the greatest of all time, almost assuredly. He probably had the greatest career of any NASCAR driver who's ever existed. But he did not end his career well, which brings us to him being from a fame to a fail driver. Richard Petty started off his career fantastically, but he did get in many big wrecks, as you can see here. He started off his career from 1960, his first really full-time year. From 1960 to 1979, 190 wins and 7 championships. Richard Petty, fantastic in 19 years. In 19 years, he got 7 titles and almost 200 wins. And some of the years weren't even full-time. But Richard Petty, after so many years of greatness, he got involved in crashes. His team just went down. And in his last years, from 1980 all the way to 1992, no championships and only 10 wins. That is still a lot, but all those wins came before 1985. Richard Petty he is still the greatest driver of all time. He's probably had one of the best careers. But Richard Petty is still a Hall of Famer easily. But he did not end his career well, just like many, like Kasey Kahne. He didn't end his career well. Many other drivers never ended their career well. Richard Petty, he was amazing on the track. And he's made a team now. It's not very good, though. It's basically like the end of his career now. Richard Petty has crashed out of many races ever since. The top 5s have went down from 1960 to 1979. He had over 20 top 10s, 10 top 5s even, every season. But starting, once again, 1980, he was lucky to get over 15 in many seasons. Richard Petty just never brought up greatness in his last years. He could have got over 10 championships, but sadly, he did not. It's one of the biggest what-ifs, you could say, in the NASCAR world. If Richard Petty would have been like he was in the 1960s and 70s, would he have gotten over 10 titles and over 250 wins? We will never know, as we see his last ever lap on the track footage at Atlanta Motor Speedway. He wrecked in that race and he finished many laps down. Richard Petty in NASCAR for 35 years, one of the greatest of all time, completing 1,184 races, 200 wins, 555 top 5s, 712 top 10s, 123 poles, and over 300,000 laps led. Over 51,000 laps led. Over 300 laps on the tracks. Richard Petty, one of the greatest all time, did not end his career well. He couldn't get the greatest finishes like he had before. He's not really a big fail, but from his standpoint, he could have done way better. And that is why Richard Petty went from a fame driver to a fail driver.